Want to buy a home, but you're freaked out by home prices?
Well, back on episode 524 of the Queer Money podcast, we interviewed Angela Rosman of Women's Personal Finance to talk about why home prices are so damn high these days. But that doesn't actually help you buy a home knowing what the problem is.
So here are 10 of the most affordable cities to buy a home that are also LGBTQ friendly.
Coming in at number 10 is Rockford, Illinois. Home values in Rockford, Illinois for the typical home average about $145,000 for property. Cost of living there is 79.0% of the national average, which is tied for the lowest on this list of top 10. Median incomes for an individual, however, are $43,000 a year. Now get this, it takes 3.33 times the median income of an individual to be able to afford the average home in Rockford, Illinois. The average income per individual is $55,000 a year, and it takes 2.63 times the average income of an individual to be able to buy the average home in Rockford, Illinois.
Coming in at number 9 is Baltimore, Maryland, where average home values or typical home values are $179,000. Median income in Baltimore is $53,000, which means it takes 3.39 times the median income of an individual to buy the typical home. Average income is $73,000, which means it's 2.56 times your average income of an individual to buy the typical home.
Coming in at number 8 is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Home values in Pittsburgh average for the typical home $193,000 per property, the highest on this list of top 10. The cost of living there is 94.7% of the national average, also the highest on this list of top 10. Median incomes for an individual come in about $57,000 per year, so it takes 3.38 times the median income of an individual to be able to buy the average home in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Average incomes come in at $76,000 a year, and it takes 2.54 times the average income of the average individual to be able to buy the average home. Pittsburgh has both the highest median and average incomes in our list of top 10.
Coming in at number 7 is St. Louis, Missouri, where the typical property costs $160,000. Median incomes for an individual are coming in at $51,000, which means it's just over 3 times or 3.12 times of that typical individual median income to buy that average home. Average incomes come in at $63,000, which means it's 2.53 times that average income to buy your typical home.
This is Queer Money Podcast episode number 531. We're continuing our most affordable LGBTQ plus friendly city series in all different shapes and sizes. This week, we're focusing on home affordability per a listener or viewer request. So how do we come up with this measurement? Well, we took the average home prices per Zillow and divided them by the median and average incomes from the most recent US Census. And then, of course, we added the HRC Municipal Equality Index overlay to make sure it was each of these locations was gay friendly, and each of these locations scores a 100 on HRC's MEI.
So, for a little context, I think, well, a lot of us use New York as kind of the premier city to live in for LGBT folks. It takes 8.79 times the median income of $70,000 for an individual to buy the typical home in New York. It takes 6.25 times the average income of $90,000 for an individual to buy the typical home. So the traditional recommendation is that you don't take out a mortgage that is more than 3 times your salary. So as you can see, in many of the cities that we're looking at here, an individual comes pretty close to being able to buy a home just on their one salary, not including the salary of a spouse or a partner, or maybe going in together with somebody else to buy a home. Now, last week on the podcast, we covered the 12 best countries for LGBTQ folks to live in, and we're going to continue to look at more data around places where LGBTQ folks can live both inside and outside the United States.
With no fees or minimums and no overdraft fees, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One, N.A., member FDIC. All right, coming in at number 6 is Covington, Kentucky, a place we recently had the pleasure of visiting and can confirm it's super cute and there are pride flags everywhere. Home values in Kentucky for the average home average about $186,000 per property. Median income for an individual is $57,000 a year, and it takes 3.26 times the median income for an individual to be able to buy the typical home in Covington, Kentucky. Average incomes for an individual come in at $75,000 a year, and it takes 2.47 times the average income of the average individual to be able to buy the average home in Covington, Kentucky.
Coming in at number 5 is Syracuse, New York, where the typical property goes for 158,000. Median income in Syracuse is $55,000. So it takes 2.87 times an individual earning the median income to buy your average home. Average incomes come in at $69,000, which means it takes about 2.28 times that average income to be able to buy your typical home.
Coming at number 4 is Huntington, West Virginia. Home values for the typical home in Huntington average $114,000 per property. Cost of living is 79% of the national average, which is tied for the lowest on this top 10 list here. Median incomes for an individual come in at $37,000 a year, and it takes 3.05 times the average median or the median income for an individual to be able to buy the typical home in Huntington, West Virginia. Average incomes for an individual come in at $54,000 a year, and it costs 2.11 times the average income to be able to buy typical home in Huntington, West Virginia. Huntington does have the lowest median income on our list here of top 10.
Coming in at number 3 is Birmingham, Alabama, which we got a great review from somebody living in Birmingham saying the queer community is great there and folks should think about if they want to move to a place where it's warm and stay within the bubble of Birmingham, it's a great place. Part of the reason why it might be a great place is home values come in at around $105,000 for your typical property. So if you're earning the median income of $40,000 as an individual, it takes 2.59 times your income to buy that typical home. If you're earning the average income as an individual of $51,000, then it takes just over 2 times or 2.04 times your income to buy that typical home. Now, Birmingham does have the lowest average incomes in the top 10, and I think that may be one of the reasons why home values are so low there. The mission of Queer Money is to financially empower the LGBTQ plus community. Join us in thanking Capital One for supporting that mission.
Things to note and honorable mentions include all cities on this top 10 list here did score a 100 on the Human Rights Campaign's Municipal Equality Index. And all cities on this top 10 list here have a cost of living below the national average, which is nice. If you want to have access to all the data that we've been compiling throughout this entire series, including this episode, go to queermoneypodcast.com/cities. Some honorable mentions that we are going to throw out this week. The first is Ferndale, that we've been to in Detroit several times. It's a fabulously gay neighborhood in Detroit. It comes in at number 22 in our analysis. Chicago, another city that we love, comes in at number 24. And Norman, Oklahoma in the Sun Belt comes in at number 31. So remember to smash that like and share button and let other LGBT plus folks know about this series and this show.
Coming in at number 2 is Dayton, Ohio. Now, Dayton, Ohio has home values coming in at $106,000 per property. Median income for individuals is $52,000. So that means it's just over 2 times or 2.05 times your individual median income to buy that typical home. On average incomes in Dayton come in at $66,000, which means it's 1.61 times your average income to be able to buy that typical home. One of the cool things about Dayton is less than 45 minutes away from Cincinnati, which has a thriving queer scene with lots of gay-themed restaurants and bars in several different neighborhoods. John and I can attest to this because we just visited that area recently.
Yeah, very, very cute area of the country. Highly suggest visiting there if you don't want to live there. Coming at number 1, our winner here is Detroit, Michigan, another city that we have been to several times and love. Home values, for the typical home value, their average is about $68,000 per property, the lowest on this top 10 list here. Median income for an individual is $40,000 a year. Get this, it only takes 1.69 times the median income of an individual to be able to buy the typical home in Detroit, Michigan. That is the lowest of all of the cities that we analyzed, the total of 455 cities that we analyzed on this list. So that's crazy. Average income for an individual is $52,000 a year. And this is also crazy. It takes 1.29 times the average income of the average individual to be able to buy the average home. Again, this comes in at the lowest of all the 455 cities that we analyzed.
I think that what's interesting with Detroit is a lot of people may be thinking, well, yeah, there's a lot of homes in Detroit that are abandoned or really cheap because the neighborhood or the areas aren't that great. But it does show that you would have a lot of money left over to put into making that home your own.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are like, I wish I would have benefited from the rise in appreciation in properties in San Francisco from back in the 60s and New York from back in the 60s and 70s. And, this is that opportunity for our generation now. There's a lot of investments being made by both the city and investors in Detroit. Some really cute neighborhoods that are bubbling up. They've got Trader Joe's and Whole Foods and a couple different LGBTQ friendly neighborhoods. So this is just a great opportunity for somebody who wants to become a home buyer. To be able to own a home, this is the place to go. And when you think about uh, 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 climate change, this might be a great place, especially in 20, 30 years, to be able to live or be able to benefit from the appreciation because everybody's going to be flocking to the Great Lakes region.
Yeah.
There are lots of, like we said, lots of cute neighborhoods that are LGBT friendly all throughout Detroit. And for those in the Detroit area or who will be in the Detroit area on August 15th, we're hosting another Queer Money Bingo with the Capital One Cafe there in downtown Detroit. So definitely look out for more information on that coming soon.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? Share them with in the comments here on this video on YouTube or TikTok or on Spotify if you're listening to the podcast. All of the data again for our growing analysis for all the different episodes that we have done on this affordable LGBTQ friendly cities series can be found at queermoneypodcast.com/cities.
Capital One Auto Navigator does more than just auto financing. We're here to help you find a car you love, too. Shop millions of cars from thousands of dealers nationwide. Research your favorite makes and models. Explore dealers near you and more. All on Auto Navigator.
Join us next Tuesday when we talk with Heather Boucher, a member of the Council of Economic Advisors in the Biden-Harris administration, about how they are lowering costs for Americans. And then next Thursday when we take a look at the best cities for LGBTQ folks who are renters.
If you'd like to see the data from this growing series that we're collecting, please go to queermoneypodcast.com/cities or click the link in your podcast player or click the link right here if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you and have a great weekend.